The Brighter Shores situation is crazy. I'm sorry, I had to. So, there's some stuff going on with Brighter Shores. There is a lot of criticism coming in, and by far and large, the biggest point of criticism is essentially player progression. And the player progression doesn't feel very satisfying. Now, there's a few reasons that we're going to get into as to why that's the case, but the developer of Brighter Shores, which if you did not know is Andrew Gower, he's the main dev, who is also the guy who made RuneScape. So we're going to have some parallels drawn between the two games here in just 1 second, don't you worry. The developer has come out and essentially doubled down against the criticisms. So here is the only line that matters. First, I would like to reassure you that your hard work, leveling up, and your professions is definitely not wiped, reset, or made irrelevant when you go to a new episode. Are you saying that the game's own developer is wrong? Yes. Yes, I am. Here's why. How Brighter Shores currently works is that you have 4 episodes at the moment. Episode 1 and 2 are entirely free to play. Episode 3 and 4, you have to pay the subscription, which is, I think, $6 per month minimum. Point is, episode 1 and 2, free to play, aka the vast majority of players, at least right now, that are interacting with the game, are only going to interact with these 2 episodes. As soon as you walk through the gate between episode 1 and episode 2, every single skill that you trained in episode 1 is not used at all in episode 2. So if you're trying to tell me that that is not technically resetting the progress because you still have the levels of episode 1, it doesn't matter because you can't use the levels in episode 2. That's exactly what people are complaining about. So stop trying to hit us with the technically stuff. You literally cannot use anything except for like healing potions and the measly 5% XP potions, which, by the way, the 5% XP potions last 2 minutes. That's like barely enough time if you're doing a gathering profession to gather a full inventory. If you're doing like a crafting profession, you get like maybe 1.5 inventories worth of stuff before you have to pop the potion again. Like it's bad. And that's 5% XP boost. You basically would just be better off having the extra slot in your inventory because the potion takes up a slot. Anyway, that's a whole different topic. But as it currently stands, again, crossing between episode 1 and 2, there is nothing inside of episode 2 that requires anything from episode 1. Now, the only exception you might be thinking is, oh, combat, right? You kill monsters, they drop loot, you use it in episode 1, and then when you go through episode 2, you have a slight advantage on the monster. The gear literally becomes useless. Literally. The gear has 0 stats, and there'll be a little grayed out box saying episode 1 over the gear. On top of that, the combat skill that you're actually training is different. In episode 1, it's called guard. In episode 2, it's called scout. What's the difference? Nothing. Actually nothing. A different icon in the menu. That's it. They functionally are the exact same skill. So Andrew Gower, yes, we are quite literally having things made irrelevant when you go to a new episode, especially if you are playing the game free to play. Now, I'm at the tail end of episode 2, about to go into episode 3. I'm going to pay the $6 a month. I want to check it out at the very least because maybe episode 3 and 4 have functionally different things. As is described in this post that he made, the episodes are also heavily interlinked, so you will regularly find yourself going back and forth between them. For example, you might use in episode 3 to combat, kill some monsters, potion reagents. Then you're going to take them to episode 1, make some potions, use in episode 4. Once you get to episode 3, you start making your own weapons, which you tuned any of episode 1 to 4. The point is, do you see the problem here? Once you reach episode 3, you can start making your weapons, which you can tune for any of the 1 to 4 episodes. Oh, episode 3, you mean the one that you have to pay money for? And don't even try to start with the argument of, oh, you're not supposed to play the game free to play. You're supposed to be paying for the game, obviously, to get the full content. The free to play stuff's just a trial, a demo of everything that what's to come. Oh, but wait, the problem is that episode 1 and 2, nothing transfers over. If the transferring over stuff only happens in episode 3 and 4, that means that the gameplay loop that 1 and 2 provide is completely different. Thus, all the criticism is entirely valid. It blows my mind. It's like if you played free-to-play RuneScape and instead of the non-member skills being attack, strength, defense, hit points, prayer, range, mage, like all the combat skills, the core to RuneScape that are directly translated over to membership, it's like instead of if like Slayer was locked in free-to-play, they unlocked Slayer, but they locked like strength. It's like, oh, you're eventually going to be able to feel that meta progression, right? The whole reason people play RPGs is to feel that sense of progression at every single step and have it persist. It's like if you just totally removed attack and strength, you only had defense to train in free to play, and then as soon as you bought membership, you get attack and strength. It's like, it makes no sense. And the final section here, what are we going to change? Number one, they basically just made it so it's not your combat level, which again is the exact same skill in every single episode. It just resets because why the heck not? Now it's your total level. So I guess you have like some kind of like visual progression there. Ooh. Then number two, and this is actually a great idea, and the fact that they didn't think of this is kind of alarming to me when they developed this game for 10 years, suggesting some special content relying on multiple combat levels. So remember, you have guard skill episode 1, scout skill level 2, and I don't know what 3 and 4 are called. So you have a boss that requires like 20 guard, 15 scout, and then like 30 of the episode 3 skill, something like that. Like the fact that that was not thought of is kind of a big red flag to me. And then number 3, we obviously need to better communicate our breadth and depth system. No, you don't need to communicate it at all. The players are not mistaken. The players are fully aware of what's going on. They're just telling you it sucks balls. Big difference between the two. So to cap things off here, I found this review from a player who's played 18 hours. The game at this point has only been out for 3 days, 72 hours. So across 72 hours, he's played 18. That's pretty significant. Anyway, let me read this review word for word because it pretty much perfectly encapsulates the Brighter Shores experience right now. When the Gower brothers said that they never intended anyone to hit 99 in a skill in RuneScape, they sure as probably dick, balls maybe, made sure that the max level of 500 will never ever be hit by anyone in this game except the most vein-scratchingly addicted. Which, if you do not play RuneScape and you're not familiar with RuneScape, there are a lot of players that fit that criteria. The level 52 equivalent of a skill in RuneScape is level 24 in this game, and I'm just now hitting the second cycle of the same enemies that I've killed for my level that have the exact same drops of gear that you completely ignore unless it's rare or better, in which case it's better than a level 3 rare you've been holding since it's got a lucky drop off a crow. That's like quite literally what happened to me. So the way that the gear works in this game is that there is a level associated with it, which increases the base stats a little bit, and by a little bit, I mean a little bit, but there's also a rarity tied to it, a star system. So if you have a rank 3 or tier 3 copper sword, it's going to be significantly better than a tier 1, a 1-star. This means that when you unlock higher tier monsters to kill, you're not necessarily going to get a better drop because you have to get the higher tier of the weapon. For reference, I leveled up my combat skill in episode 1 to 21, and I used a literal level 0 sword the entire time because it dropped with 3 stars. A 3-star level 0 weapon was better than a level 20 weapon that was dropping. Just let that sink in for a second. Just to repeat that cycle 500 times since a new mob in the area requires a new combat skill that I'm not training. Again, this is the reset that people are talking about. The only skill expression in combat is step unders to sync faster with enemy weapons with your own, which is still kind of clunky. If you played RuneScape, it's a very similar concept, but it just is like 5 times slower. It's very weird. And the only way to get combat gear early on is via participating in the skill expressionless, entirely RNG-based combat. Didn't get a rare weapon in a while? Enjoy grinding weaker mobs until you get it. The weapon has a damage type that the next best creature to fight is immune to. Sucks to suck. Keep grinding the weaker ones. Yes. Oh, I also forgot to mention that monsters have straight up immunity to damage types. How the gear works is that there's a strength rating, which is just like the global damage of the weapon essentially. And then it rolls with a damage type. There are 3 damage types, like the combat triangle in RuneScape. There's just 3 damage types in this game. It's the same idea though. But instead of monsters being resistant to a damage, they are completely immune. So what he's saying here is that say you grinded some low level monster to get a higher tier weapon because you desperately needed an upgrade, you finally get it, you're so excited, then you move on to the current highest level monster you can fight, and it's immune to the damage type on the weapon that rolled. Sorry. So your grinding to be able to grind better is inconvenienced by RNG. Healing potions are an active hindrance. You take 2 hits in the span of drinking 1, that is correct, and even the 20% healing potions do not offset the damage that you take in that time, after which they go on a cooldown and you can't chug them to get to full health instead of fighting anything slightly stronger with you for some preparation. Yes, what he's saying is if you're locked in combat with a higher level monster, you have 2 options. Number 1, cast the immunity spell and run away. Number 2, die. Experience potions give a 5% increase for 2 minutes. It is actively more beneficial to have the extra inventory slot in 99% of cases because the runtime between the resource nodes and banking the tedious drop mechanic is best delayed by the experience gain of 1 more interaction. And so he's basically saying it's better to have the empty inventory slot for efficiency. Which is true. The grind in RuneScape culminated in unique, visibly interesting gear, items being used in a huge variety of things, that's a massive point, with many interwoven links between skills, with the meat of the skill being accessible to you in about 8 hours of committed gameplay. Here, in Brighter Shores, you entirely commit your extremely limited inventory to catching the same 6 fish in a row 4 separate times, then to run to the fish seller. Progression after 10 hours of fishing is the 4th recolor of the exact same fish in the exact same spot using the exact same spawns gives you slightly more gold, so after a few more hours of fishing, you finally buy your second 0.6% more XP enchantment. Idling something gives fractions of what active play does, so any hopes of, well, you can progress while away from your keyboard is entirely untrue in any meaningful way. 30 minutes of gathering plants netted me the same experience as being 15 hours away from the keyboard doing the idle gathering skill. In conclusion, realistically, I see two options here. Number one, the game stays catered to the mud/grind for the sake of grinding people without actually having anything that they like while walking and talking, barking like it's an MMO. Or number two, and this is where I heavily agree, the game makes a sharp turn much like RuneScape Classic to RuneScape 2 did, and it becomes less of a constant punch to the balls, the dick, whatever, to play. Items get more uses, things becomes more interwoven, the port gets a few trees to cut, the forest gets a few fish to cut, combat is not a tedious endeavor when there might be anything to do all before the grinding for the sake of grinding. Currently, a level 472 fisherman is still fishing the exact same flounders a level 0 fisherman will, except they're black instead of mottled and likely sell for a few hundred gold instead of a couple copper, which both fishermen use to buy a 0.6% experience upgrade, except one will be excited to do so for the first time and the other has done the exact same thing for thousands of hours and hundreds of times already. I find it hard to believe that anyone would stick their hand up to be the first guy. And to cap off the review here, directly addresses the blog post that I just mentioned, saying that the breadth and depth system essentially doesn't have any of the depth. Because as of right now, the only depth to the systems is that you have 400 levels of the different bacon sandwiches here: bad, okay, acceptable, great, excellent, top quality, masterpiece, and you play the Uber Eats mini game, which is exactly what you're doing, to get some money, and you get that 0.6% XP increase. Like, that's the entire game. Grinding for the sake of grinding. That's the exact crowd this game is trying to appeal to, because that's the exact same crowd that plays RuneScape. I am fully aware of that, as is everybody else that is levying criticism of Brighter Shores. The problem is that it seems like there's nothing to grind towards, and on top of that, because you're getting completely new skills in each episode, it feels like the grinding that you just did was entirely pointless. Make no mistake, when people are saying that things are resetting, they're talking about the sense of progression of their character, which, as it currently stands, is exactly what's happening here in Brighter Shores. But again, I am going to keep playing this game. I am going to try out episode 3 and maybe even episode 4, because hey, I do want to give it a shot, as Andrew Gower asked in his blog post. I do want to see what this game is capable of. But the initial impressions, especially for a player that is not going to pay for episodes 3 and 4, is pretty bad at this current state. Thank you guys for watching. You can check out my stream at twitch.tv/WoolieGaming if you want to see me play some Brighter Shores live. Other than that, I'll see you in the next video.